Welcome to the NACMA Podcast, your monthly source for insights, inspiration, and innovation in collegiate athletics marketing. Each month, we bring you conversations with industry leaders, creative thinkers, and game changers, all who are shaping the future of college sports marketing within the revenue generation, brand management, and fan development areas. Whether you're tuning in from campus, the office, or even on the go, we're just glad you're here. A reminder that applications for the NACMA Mentorship Program are being accepted until Friday, October the 17th. Now, in this episode, we discuss the branding behind Eastern Michigan University with Greg Steiner and University of Colorado Boulder with Brent DePage and Lexi Hartman. We discuss maintaining brand identity with the use of team-specific logos, how vault marks are approved and used, also the approach to social media voice and tone, and there'll be so much more as well. Stay with us for tips and insights on how to maintain your brand and setting yourself apart using your social media voice. So let's dive right in and explore what's new, what's next, and what's working in the world of college athletics marketing. We'll do that right here on the NACMA Podcast.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lexi Hartman. I am a digital content manager at the University of Colorado. And basically, that's just another way to say social media manager. And I work primarily with our men's basketball program and then our overall main athletics account. So just the @CUBuffs handle that oversees all of our sports.
I'll go next. Also from Colorado, Brent DePape, Assistant Athletic Director of Creative here. I work mainly with branding and licensing, and I help oversee all 17 sports and internal departments. I've been here about 10 years now.
And then I'm Greg Steiner. I'm the Senior Associate AD for External Affairs here at Eastern Michigan. Have been in this role just about a year now, but have been at Eastern the last 25, mostly leading communications and really all of our digital efforts, but now focusing on external and branding and licensing and all the things that go along with this new era.
Great, thank you everyone. And my name is Gianna Sarkis. I am the Brand Advancement Manager at University Marinos for Rochester Institute of Technology. All right, so today we're going to be talking about maintaining brand identity, integrity, and identity, differentiating account voices, and everything to do with the brand from an athletics and university standpoint. So next, if we can get into how is your department structured when it comes to managing social media accounts and who handles that?
So here at CU, we have kind of all sorts of hands on our accounts. Like I said, I manage our men's basketball platforms and our main athletics platforms. And we also have another digital content manager on staff whose responsibility is solely our football platforms. Because as we all know, football is a ginormous thing to take on in and of itself. So he is primarily our football stuff. And then after that, it kind of falls on our communication staff or our SIDs to do the day-to-day management of the rest of our accounts. So we do have a full-time women's basketball creative staff as well. She isn't always managing the day-to-day of those social accounts. She relies on our women's basketball SID to assist her in that. But other than that, all of our sports are run by our SIDs. Sometimes, our interns will jump in and help here and there on those accounts. Their student workers will also help there here and there on those accounts. Myself and Daniel, who runs football, will sometimes jump in kind of on best practices or to help with certain things. But as far as day-to-day management, it falls on our communication staff.
Very similar to Eastern, take kind of the dual role approach. Most of the time, it's an SID-led effort, but then marketing does do a fair amount of their own digital content that they'll put in and make sure that we're getting those messages out. Football, as you said, is a different beast. So they've got their own person that likes to do it, but we'll still get some guidance from us still on the communication side of things. And then you add in then trying to get the marketing messages out that Learfield or your sponsorship people want. So trying to find the balance there. So in reality, there's probably only maybe 6 people who have logins, but there's a bigger voice overall that gets to decide what the message is.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. So we're going to jump into our first topic of maintaining brand integrity. And I'd like to start off with the use and or approval of team-specific logos. How do you ensure consistent brand integrity across all teams and department accounts?
I can jump in on this one. So we have specific word marks for all of our 17 sports. You know, it's basically Colorado and then volleyball or basketball, but it's the same structure in a variety of methods. Some incorporate our primary mark, Ralphie, and some just have the word mark with it, but every team has all of those set up for them. They're all uniform, same colors, same designs, same usage on light and dark backgrounds. And that's something that I set up years ago and then just disseminated out to them through their Creative Cloud libraries. So anytime they need to pull their sports specific mark, it's consistent. It's something I made that's in there. So I never have to worry about keeping a close eye on how they're handling that. I trust them to do that. And that trust comes through a variety of creative content meetings that we have. Like our team is really close and we love working well with one another and we trust each other to do their jobs. And that's why they're brought here. And so we've got a pretty, pretty stringent brand identity guide that goes out to all of our creatives. We have got a broader one if we ever need to send that out externally. And that has all of our logos on it. So they know the colors to use, all of our hex, RGB, CMYK, Pantone colors, all of our fonts and how to use them and when to use them. So it's pretty well laid out and it's been like that for years. So we don't really have to keep too close of tabs on anybody misusing any of their sports brand marks.
Similar but slightly different here. The aspect that uh, baseball has a specific script E mark, you can see it on my coat, that only they are supposed to use. Similarly, football has a diamond plate mark that they have made their blocky into. That's supposed to be football only. However, we've had people that like to drift in pole, and our golf teams are notorious for wanting to use those. So we have to kind of watch and make sure that we've not allowing everybody to use brands that aren't in their category, and then explaining to them why it's a sports specific mark to them. Similarly, we have the word marks that are laid out to be able to use across those each individual sport, but then it's always like, well, we want that. Well, it's that hard line you have to sometimes stay with.
I feel that we've had those conversations in the past as well. Well, if they get to use it, then why don't we
Yeah,
get
it
to use
should
it?
be free
So
game. And then Rowing like thinks that, well, they would like to have their own mark. But then again, once you start adapting and changing the brand, you're not really, it's not the same block E anymore.
yeah, we've had to have those same difficult conversations and we rely the brand is king. Like maintaining that structure is the only way it's going to work. Once you let that toothpaste out of the tube, it's hard to get back in there. So we rely on that. And I get a lot of support from my executive staff on that and my director of licensing on that. When those issues do arise, we try to find workarounds and things to do that way. One thing that we have done that I think a lot of schools are now doing, and I'll share my screen real quick just to kind of show you, is we've made so Chip is our mascot, our buffalo. We've got a live mascot, Ralphie, two different things, but both buffaloes. We made sport-specific chip marks for all of our sports, and that's kind of something fun to use. And actually, golf, to your point, you know, they do like to push those boundaries, and they were the first ones to come up with what we call Iron Chip. And I'll go ahead and show you that. Send a request. All right, that's going to be right here. Does everybody see this? We're good? All right, so yeah, you can see iron chip there, use on light and dark, one color options as well. So we've made one for every single sport. And so they all kind of have something that's unique to them without having to make a specific separate logo or font. So.
Yeah, and then I can piggyback on that. In our own league, Kent State has rolled out some of those kind of marks that they're starting to use. I know we're starting to have discussions just for especially kid club purposes and all those, because right now, again, it's hard to get people to wrap their arms around a letter that we use for a logo. So again, something a little warm and fuzzier to be able to see a bird character is what ultimately CLC, who's our licensing partner, has encouraged us to kind of move to. And I think you're going to see more and more schools start even rolling back some retro brands too, just because you still have control of some of those marks that people still have so much affinity to.
That leads us into our next question. So how do you monitor the use of those vault marks?
Greg, you want to take this one this time?
Yeah, for us, I mean, we have a old Eagle head that is not a licensable version. I mean, it's something that our athletic director has said that we don't want to use, and we have gotten away from it, and we've had to do some cease and desist orders because people are still using it, and they, as much as you want to, you got to get away from it. Similarly, I mean, we made the switch from being the Hurons back in 1991. It's not a mark that we hold a copyright on anymore. So like, it's not something that I can actually license out to somebody, even though there's a lot of people that want to use it. You have to be very cognizant of that and know who now actually possesses those rights. So as much as we'd like to make money off a Huron trademark, we can't. So I mean, that's the hard part that people forget. These are marks that now somebody else owns the rights to.
That's a tough one. I'm glad we're not in that boat, and I feel for you because I can't imagine how much of a headache that would be to try and manage some of that without having the ownership of it. So we also are through CLC and our vault marks here. I can go ahead and share that screen with you real quick. Yeah, and so our use case is this event tied to a historical event or any kind of history around that? And that is when we will use some of our vault marks. We don't just put them on our everyday graphics just because they look cool, because people do love them, but we closely monitor use case. If it makes sense to use that logo, then sure, we'll use it. But we are currently promoting our brand currently, and that is going to be with our primary mark. And so we do use a lot of these through CLC and our vault license vendors, and they do pay extra to use these vault marks, and that comes with a higher royalty rate that comes back to the university. But we like using these, but not overusing these. So that's kind of the trickiest part, is telling people, sorry, I know you love this, but we can't use it. It doesn't make sense. We don't want to saturate the market with 10 different vault marks. So we use them very sparingly for that reason specifically, and especially on internal uses. Like we will talk with somebody who might be requesting something for a tennis reunion from the 1960s team or whatever, and then it might make sense to use the logo that we had during that decade. So it has to make sense. We don't just use it willy-nilly, even though they are super cool, but we do keep a close eye on that program.
Thank you. So we're going to switch over to the brand style guides between the main athletic accounts, team accounts, university. So can you walk us through your brand style guides and how it differs between the main athletic accounts, team specific ones, university ones, and how do you define what is used where?
We don't have team specific brand guidelines. We have athletic department brand guidelines, and I can show you a basic one sheet of that. So we've got different uses for different requests. So this is one we might send out to every new employee. Here's our main logos, full color, one color, use on black, use on light. Here's all of our different colors, the Pantone colors and all that stuff, and a link below to where you can click on gathering all those assets and our fonts, our primary, how to use it, when to use it, and stuff like that. We've got a more in-depth, like 16-page brand guideline that we'll send to maybe like an ESPN or something, or somebody who might be making like an editorial about the Buffs, and they'll need to know a little more detail, like when not to use this logo on a real busy background, or how much safe space the logo will need when used in conjunction with verbiage or imagery and stuff like that. But this one sheet basic brand guideline is what we typically send out to everybody, and you can get 95% of your work done based off of this. Our teams will use these logos and assets, and we challenge our designers, be like, this is what we have. It's up to you to find a creative way to use it. If you want to make things different, you're going to have to work a little harder, but we're not going to bring in a bunch of other fonts and other colors just because you're bored of the same stuff we have. This is our brand, and we're pretty hard line on that. Like if there is a script font that someone wants to use for a birthday or for a celebratory event or something like that, if it makes sense, then we might use a one-off, but it's not going to make it to our brand guidelines. And our brand guidelines do differentiate quite a bit from the campus branding. They have a different CU lockup that is for campus and academics specific, and that is slightly different, a 9-degree skew on the CU, and that was implemented back in 2005 when we became a Nike school. They took our vertical CU and gave it a 9-degree skew and came up with a new Ralphie mark for us and gave us a new set of fonts to use. So that was a whole brand kit that they sent to us, and that's what we've based everything on since 2005. And the only time that we would allow campus to use our athletics mark is if it was for like a co-event, like if they're doing something with athletics. We're not just going to let welcome new students and throw Ralphie on it because they're coming to the University of Colorado. They're not coming to play for the Colorado Buffaloes in the athletic department. So it has to make sense, and they're really good about communicating that to us. If someone wants to use it, they'll send a request and we'll examine that and see if it makes sense. The only time besides that we do allow our athletic marks to be used if they are for an official club sport. They can use our Ralphie mark, they can use our colors, and they can use our fonts. RSOs cannot use any of those, unfortunately, but you have to be an official club sport team to use our athletic marks outside of the athletic department. Kind of a lot. Hope that makes sense. Let me know if you have any other questions about that.
It does make sense. And off of that, do you ever see a big push from the university to use more of a university's approach of their brand guide on athletics, or do you keep it kind of separate between the two?
They've never pushed for that. It's been the opposite, if anything, because most of the students like our Ralphie logo. That's what people recognize when they hear of Colorado Buffaloes, just because of sports, and it's such a big thing. Our Ralphie mark is globally recognized, whereas our campus lockup and logo probably is not, and they understand that. They see that there is more weight tied to that, so they do ask to use it more often, but it has to make sense. I do wish that we had one for both, but we don't, and we have to have those conversations case by case.
Yeah, at Eastern, actually, we went through a phase where campus wanted us to kind of change our block E. They wanted a more serify look, and similar they wanted us to follow what they were using, and then the alums pushed back and said that that's not a look that they wanted. And eventually, campus moved to using our block E. Granted, they use it in a different lockup fashion. They usually stick it in a box of some sort and don't just use the standalone block E. So we've kind of helped drive our platform, but there's still a big difference between what campus does and what we do, because they like to use a little neon-y green than the traditional style. So again, you can see academics sometimes trying to push back and be their own, but we don't always follow what they want. And similarly, they don't follow what we want.
Way to stick to your guns, Greg. I love that.
Yeah, I can say we held firm to the block E, and that's what campus moved to.
Nice.
Great. Well, we're going to switch gears now and talking about differentiating account voices for different social accounts within your team sports and athletic department. So a lot of the time there's a formal versus informal approach. So how do you approach the tone and voice of your social accounts within your teams and athletic department? And do you lean for a more formal, like straight to the point, or do you lean for more of an informal tone, something fun and outgoing?
I think on our platforms at the University of Colorado, we take what is basically the results of our voice that the fans see on social media appears to be an informal voice. I think it just kind of connects with our fans better. People aren't going usually on social media to see anything super, at least from a sport account, super formal, I guess, for lack of a better word. I think that we kind of try to match the tone of our fans and of what's going on. And at the end of the day, we are sports teams, so we want to have fun. We want to like portray those teams in the best, most positive light that we can. We like to have fun with it, all of those things. But all that to say, we are representing a university and a lot more than just those teams and having fun on social media. So I think there's a lot of work on the back end to make sure that we're using those fun tones and those maybe more playful voices in an intentional way, and still representing everything accurately, and obviously finding the moments that things do need to be more formal. So, for example, if we need to put out any sort of release, maybe from the athletic director's office, or if unfortunately, we make a staffing change anywhere, or anything like that, you need to find the moments where being more formal and to the point is appropriate. But overall, I think we like to take a more fun approach because it is social media at the end of the day, and a lot of people are kind of just looking for fun and ways to engage with their teams.
Yeah, and I think for us, at least on our team accounts, we try to give them the ability to have that different voice and kind of create their own personality. Athletically, we've tried to keep the main athletics account to be more of a kind of informational tone and that kind of thing. So that's if you usually see more hard news straight from the primary athletic account than you do more of a team account. And then the other unique challenge has been that in most instances that a lot of universities have a larger social media account, which then can then parlay into helping push kind of some more content out. Actually, it's the opposite here, where our athletic accounts are bigger than our university accounts. So a lot of times they'll ask us to help drive some of the content that they're trying to push out as well.
Do you think that the voice of each account is intentionally crafted by the staff member that is running the account? So do you think they have an effect on the voice? And if it changes hands, that voice might change based on the staffing?
I think in an ideal world, the answer would be no there, and you'd kind of have a consistent voice, like throughout a specific sport account, for as long as possible. But I also think it's just kind of a natural, thing that happens when you have different people kind of crafting those posts and kind of using their own perspectives and unique, maybe senses of humor or something like that, and bringing that to the account. That being said, we do have like a social media playbook that goes out to all of our communication staff and our social managers, everyone that touches those accounts. So we try to kind of follow the same guidelines and the same, have the same goals going into it and everything like that. And kind of what it kind of boils down to is trying to portray the voice of the team, really, trying to kind of portray the energy that the team has, and like I said before, making sure that we're showing everything as positive as possible, even though sometimes you lose and sometimes the news isn't positive. But how can we kind of go back to our core goals of those accounts? But then, like I started off, I think it's just kind of natural that different people will interpret those guidelines and those voices in different ways, and they might vary here and there.
Yeah, similarly, I mean, again, you look at it, coaches, they sometimes have a different message that they want to push. And when those differences happen between they want to drive more of a recruiting style. Sometimes you'll see that. We've had that have to walk the fine balance where some accounts don't want anything out after a loss. And it's like, well, you have to play is still an informational ability to get creative content out there, but again, we're also still trying to inform, and you can't also run away from certain topics as well. So it's having those hard conversations, having those conversations in advance, and not when you get into the moment as well. That because those are the last times you really want to be sitting down and saying, here's why we're doing it, or here's why we're not doing it.
So do you recommend that there is a positive effect of having a set tone created in your brand guides for your sports teams to follow, um, or have a guide to follow day in and day out while managing these accounts?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, yeah, we'd love to have the consistent voice and be able to, but again, we've also seen trends change so much that again, we can have a policy or something that we want to have a plan written for, and then that can go quickly out the window, especially as again, how you look at what Facebook started as to now morphing into Twitter and TikTok and Instagram. Like again, you have to kind of have multiple different playbooks because each platform needs to convey a different way you're communicating, and I think that's tough because again, you're seeing generational and everything differences between the platforms. So sometimes it's so hard to keep up on those change, and we've had to make tough decisions. Like sometimes we're just not adding new platforms because again, the more and more you spread yourself thin out across these new platforms, also the sometimes worse your message gets.
Yeah, Greg brings up a really great point just as far as the different platforms and how we kind of speak to our fans in those different environments. So going back to your question, I think, yeah, it's good to have like those core things to rely on and fall back on. If maybe your social manager, you came up with like a funny tweet, but you kind of want to pause and say, like, does this match kind of like the message that we're trying to get across and kind of like our core values, for lack of a better way to describe it. But then going back to Greg's point, that can be different across all platforms. So for our Facebook pages, for example, that tends to be a little bit more newsy, I guess you could say, kind of like to the point, sharing news articles, sharing maybe some different style videos, things along those lines. Whereas you go over to Instagram and TikTok, you might be using a little bit more like slang. For like basketball slang or whatever sport it is that you're working on, to try to hit the audiences that are there. But I do think going back to it, it is important to kind of have your goals and have your something that you can rely on to kind of steer the ship.
Great, thank you. So, what is the one piece of advice you give to other departments trying to balance their creativity with their brand consistency?
I think Lexi, if you want to go first, I mean, I think for us, it's we also we want to be serious, but we also can't take ourselves too serious. I mean, it's social media, so you want to have fun, you want to try new things, and I think that's what we as a department know that we're in a unique spot. I mean, we have our established traditions and things, but we can also think outside the box. We can do some things that larger institutions and that have a set way they're going to do, so we can be a little edgier in some aspects, but you also have to know again what the limits are and what your audience is. So I think for us, I mean, our my advice is be yourself. I mean, don't try to be something you're not. Don't just say we're going to steal Colorado's image and brand because that's what we want to be. We can like to be that, but it's not going to fit our platform. We need to be Eastern Michigan, and that's where we need to figure out what we are and not just try to emulate somebody else.
Yeah, that's almost exactly what I was kind of gonna go with too, as far as having this goes back to the last question too, but having your identity, having your brand standards, your the voices, the goals that you want to hit, kind of always as your compass, I guess you could say. But then try to push the boundaries a little bit. Brent alluded to it earlier. You know, we have those logos, fonts, colors. But how can our graphic design team, how can our video team, how can everyone that kind of touches these accounts come up with different ways to look for different different ways to execute within those guidelines and kind of come up with creative ways to follow trends that like make sense for us and make sure that everything that we push out is still representing the University of Colorado and representing our teams, representing our student athletes in the best way, but and within our values and brand standards, but that's kind of where the fun comes in for us as a creative team is how can we make it different? How can we make it unique and kind of still represent us?
Alrighty, so as we wrap this up, any final thoughts or takeaways you'd like to share with our listeners listening with us today?
I don't think I have much. I think I might just kind of reiterate what I was saying as far as kind of having these these things to rely on is great. But like I said, I think this is where like the fun part of the job comes in is finding, uh, we are the creative department at the University of Colorado. So how can we be creative with it? How can we make our volleyball team look different than our basketball team, but still um, kind of represent everything as a whole? And I think that's the fun part in finding different trends and coming up with different ways to bring our brand to as many people as possible.
I'll just add that, like, I know that it's also making sure that you keep evolving. I mean, I know brands are there and their guidelines and whatnot, but you also can't just fall into the same thing year after year after year. I mean, for us, we had been the same look and feel and for a handful of years. So it was trying to expand, adding some new things and making sure you're also keeping those things fresh every couple of years and not just feeling like you're going through the same motions, because that's when people get tired and burn out and you stop the growth, is when you get to a point where your brand is no longer advancing, and you want to always feel like you can still have some flexibility to move what you have forward into the next generation of whatever it's going to be.
Well, that is all the questions we have for today. I would like to thank Greg, Lexi, and Brent for joining us and speaking on this branding topic. And thank you everyone for listening today, and we hope to catch you soon.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the NACMA podcast. We hope you found inspiration and ideas to take back to your campus and team. Be sure to subscribe, share, and stay connected with NACMA for more conversations that move college athletics marketing forward. And until next time, keep leading, keep learning, and keep making an impact.